New research has cast doubt on the notion that Bronze Age Yamnaya pastoralists were the first people to ride horses. The study, entitled Tracing Horseback Riding and Transport in the Human Skeleton, published in the journal Science Advances, looked at human skeletal pathology as a means to assess the possibility of horse riding on the skeletal remains of archaeological subjects. The study of horseback riding has, to date, been conducted largely through a presence/absence approach, the paper says. This current paradigm primarily focuses on identifying skeletal changes believed to be associated with riding, without fully accounting for alternative activities that could result in similar pathologies. While the field of animal paleopathology has progressed to incorporate population-level assessments that take into account factors like severity and frequency of skeletal changes, these methods are still largely absent from the study of horseback riding in human populations, the researchers claim. One critical gap in examining research is the lack of comparative studies between populations with different transport strategies. Many archaeological populations, particularly those associated with other animal-based transport methods, such as charioteering or wagon driving, have not been analysed at a population level in terms of their paleopathological patterns. Without such comparative analyses, it is difficult to confidently attribute specific skeletal changes to horseback riding, as similar changes might also arise from other forms of transport, the researchers say. To properly identify horseback riding in ancient context, it is crucial to establish a comparative framework that includes human populations known to have used different transport methods. This is especially relevant when making claims about horseback riding in contexts that predate the known domestication of horses, such as the argument put forth by Troutman et al. Comparative samples could be drawn from groups like steppe cultures where horseback riding was widespread, particularly during the era of the Mongol Empire or Turkic Khaganate. Another potential source of comparative data comes from chariot drivers in early China, before mounted riding became prevalent in the late 1st millennium BC. Chariot drivers represent a particularly interesting group for comparison because their mode of transport, while different from horseback riding, would have imposed its own set of stresses on the human skeleton. Similarly, populations associated with strong evidence of wagon or cattle transport, such as certain non-Yamnaya groups, might serve as a useful counterpoint in assessing the hypothesis that Yamnaya populations were early horse riders. Comparing the skeletal pathologies from these various transport strategies can help clarify whether the changes attributed to riding are indeed unique to that activity. In order to make these comparisons meaningful, several factors need to be considered. 1. Degree of pathological change. It is important to assess the severity of skeletal changes associated with different transport methods. Are the changes found in horseback riders more severe than those found in wagon drivers or charioteers, for instance? 2. Population-level frequency. The frequency of these changes within a population is another key factor. How common are certain skeletal pathologies among known horseback riders compared to populations using other forms of animal transport? 3. Anatomical mechanisms. A deeper understanding of the specific anatomical mechanisms that generate these skeletal pathologies is essential. For example, horseback riding likely causes different stresses on the body than chariot driving, but how exactly do these differences manifest in the skeleton? 4. Differentiation from other animal transport. Any skeletal changes thought to be diagnostic of horseback riding must be differentiated from those caused by other forms of animal transport, such as riding donkeys or cattle, which were also used for transportation in certain regions. Addressing these factors will be challenging and time-consuming, but it is essential for developing a more accurate methodology for identifying horseback riding in ancient human populations, the study authors say. Now, speaking personally, where I have trouble with this paper is that it seeks to disestablish an existing and fairly convincing hypothesis, but fails to disprove it, merely calling for a different approach. The paper says that initial reviews of available osteological data associated with various transport systems suggest several promising avenues for future research. But I think they should have done the research first, rather than saying there are avenues for them. But in particular, the paper says the biomechanics of riding suggest that the co-occurrence of two skeletal traits, changes in the pelvis and femur, may be more diagnostic of horseback riding than the presence of individual traits alone. These traits were given the highest weights in the scoring system developed by Troutman et al., but less than a third of the individuals identified as probable riders exhibited both traits. This discrepancy raises questions about the reliability of the current diagnostic criteria, the study authors say. Moreover, the frequency of co-occurrence of these traits has not yet been tested in skeletal populations known to be associated with other forms of transport, such as chariot driving or wagon use. Conducting these tests could provide critical insights into whether the skeletal changes currently attributed to horseback riding are truly unique to that activity, the authors said. It's pointed out that given the significance of horseback riding to broader narratives of horse domestication, it is crucial that archaeologists move away from a threshold-based approach that focuses on individual skeletal traits. Instead, they should adopt a preponderance of evidence approach that incorporates population-level data with comparisons with known groups. This approach should also take into account other lines of evidence, including archaeological, archaeofaunal, and biomolecular data, the paper says. For example, recent advances in ancient horse genomics have revealed that there is little to no genetic connection between the horses found at Yamnaya sites and the ancestors of modern domestic horses. Furthermore, genomic evidence suggests that the first clear indicators of horse domestication do not appear in the Black Sea region until well into the 3rd millennium BC. These findings highlight a significant disconnect between the evidence from human skeletal pathology and other data sources, such as radiocarbon dating and the appearance of horse equipment in the archaeological record. The paper concludes by saying that understanding the origins of horseback riding is crucial for interpreting both ancient and modern human history. However, the current methodologies used in human osteology are hampered by a lack of comparative datasets, the risk of equifinality, where similar skeletal changes could be caused by different activities, and inconsistencies with findings from other fields like archaeozoology and archaeology. The paper cited the similarities of chariot riding, one of the principal methods of horse propulsion in prehistory, as a possible reason for the notion that the Yamnaya rode horses. It read, "Balancing on a chariot or similar ancient two-wheeled vehicle requires a slightly crouched standing position with wide stance of the legs. This position and the responsive, quick movement required to maintain balance necessitate strenuous use of the adductor muscles, potentially mimicking the osteological changes seen in presumed horseback riders." Part of the paper's discussion section read, "While some of these issues can be addressed by targeted analysis of relevant modern and ancient populations with known life histories and specific activity associations, the available data do not support the argument for early horseback riding in Yamnaya culture based on human skeletal remains." But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and most importantly subscribe. And you can also support the channel on Subscribestar via the link in the description or via YouTube's Super Thanks. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.